Commander Jake Morrison stood at the big window of the Earth Defense Station. His coffee cup shook in his hand as he watched the alien ships come out of nowhere. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. They looked like metal cities floating in space, each one glowing with strange blue lights. "Sir, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Tony Clark from behind him. The young officer's voice was tight with fear. Jake turned around and saw more officers crowding around the main screen. The numbers on the display made his stomach drop. "How many?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 57? "Ships, sir. Each one is at least 10 miles long," Tony replied. "They just appeared out of hyperspace 5 minutes ago." Jake had been in the military for 20 years. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the asteroid mining wars, but he had never seen anything like this. The alien ships formed a perfect circle around Earth, like they were putting the planet in a cage. Admiral Lisa Carter walked into the command center. She was a small woman with gray hair, but everyone respected her. She had been fighting for Earth's freedom since she was 18 years old. Now she was 55 and had seen more battles than anyone else in the fleet. "Report?" she said in her calm voice. Lisa never got excited, even when things looked hopeless. "Unknown alien fleet, ma'am." They appeared without warning and took position around Earth. "We're completely surrounded," Jake told her. Lisa looked at the screen for a long moment. The alien ships were beautiful in a scary way. Their hulls seemed to be alive, pulsing with energy. Strange symbols glowed along their sides, and weapons that looked like giant eyes pointed toward Earth. "Have they tried to communicate?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. They sent a message 20 minutes ago. They want to talk to our leaders. They said they're from something called the Galactic Council." Lisa nodded slowly. Earth had been alone in space for so long that many people forgot there might be other intelligent life out there. Humans had built colonies on 12 worlds, but they had never met anyone else until now. "Get me President Murphy on the secure line," Lisa ordered, "and call Captain Paul Bennett. Tell him to prepare the main conference room for visitors." Jake watched as the crew rushed to follow orders. Everyone moved quickly, but he could see the fear in their eyes. The alien ships were so big that Earth's entire fleet would look like toys next to them. An hour later, President Helen Murphy arrived at the space station. She was a tall woman with brown hair and kind eyes. She had been president for 3 years, and had always tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons. But looking at the alien fleet, Jake wondered if words would be enough this time. "What do we know about them?" President Murphy asked as she entered the command center. "Not much, ma'am," Jake replied. "They call themselves the Galactic Council. They seem to have technology that's far ahead of ours. Their ships just appeared out of nowhere. And they want to talk?" "Yes, ma'am. They're sending a representative over now." As if on cue, a strange light began to fill the main conference room. The light grew brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. Then it faded and something appeared in the center of the room. The alien was tall, maybe 8 feet, with a body that looked like a giant insect. Its skin was dark green and shiny, like metal. It had 6 arms and 2 legs, and its head was covered with what looked like small eyes. When it spoke, its voice came from a small device on its chest. "I am High Arbiter Zixtala of the Galactic Council," it said. The voice was cold and mechanical. "I speak for the 47 member species of our Great Alliance." President Murphy stepped forward. She kept her face calm, but Jake could see her hands were shaking slightly. "Welcome to Earth. I'm President Helen Murphy. We're honored to meet you." The alien's many eyes focused on her. "Honor is not the purpose of this meeting, primitive creature. You have violated council law by expanding beyond your designated territory without permission." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. No one called his president a primitive creature. But Lisa put a hand on his arm, warning him to stay quiet. "We didn't know there were any laws," President Murphy replied. "We've never heard of the Galactic Council before." "Ignorance is not an excuse," Zixtala said. "Your species has built colonies on 12 worlds. You have spaceships and weapons. According to Council law, all such species must be integrated into our system. What does that mean? President Murphy asked. The alien moved closer to her. Despite being much taller, it somehow made President Murphy look small and weak. It means you will follow Council rules, you will pay tribute. You will serve the greater good of the galaxy. What kind of tribute? Secretary of Defense Robert Hayes asked. He was a big man with white hair who had been a general before becoming a politician. Zixtala turned its attention to him. 70% of your planet's resources. Half of your population will be relocated to serve as workers on Council worlds. All of your weapons will be destroyed. Your military will be disbanded. The room fell silent. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. They wanted to take half of humanity away from Earth. They wanted to destroy everything humans had built. That's impossible, General Kevin Brooks said. He was the head of Earth's military and had never backed down from a fight. We can't survive with only 30% of our resources. Survival is not guaranteed, Zixtala replied. But it is more likely than if you refuse our generous offer. And if we refuse? President Murphy asked quietly. The alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter. Then we will activate cleansing protocols. Your species will be eliminated, and your worlds will be given to more cooperative races. Jake looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. They all understood what the alien was saying. Submit or die. Give up everything that made them human or watch their entire species get wiped out. How long do we have to decide? President Murphy asked. 72 of your planetary rotations, Zixtala said. The Council's patience is limited. With that, the alien began to glow with the same strange light. A moment later, it was gone, leaving only the smell of ozone and the weight of an impossible choice. Jake looked out the window at the alien ships. They hung in space like a death sentence, waiting for humanity's answer. He wondered if 3 days would be enough time to figure out how to save the human race. Dr. Emma Rodriguez had not slept in 36 hours. She sat in her laboratory on the research ship UES Discovery, surrounded by computer screens showing alien data. Her eyes burned from staring at the information, but she could not stop. The fate of humanity might depend on what she learned about the Galactic Council. Captain Steve Miller brought her another cup of coffee. He was worried about his best scientist. Emma was young, only 28, but she was the smartest person he knew when it came to alien biology and technology. You need to rest, Steve said, setting the coffee down next to her keyboard. I can't, Emma replied without looking away from her screen. Look at this. The Council has been doing this for thousands of years. They find a new species, make the same demands, and then take over their worlds. Steve looked at the data on her screen. It showed a list of species that had been integrated into the Council. The numbers were shocking. Over 40,000 different alien races had been forced to join the Council over the past 10,000 years. How many resisted? Steve asked. Emma clicked to a new screen. Hundreds tried. Look at this. She showed him pictures of dead worlds. Planets that had once been covered with cities and forests were now just empty rock floating in space. The HFY were a warrior race, Emma explained, pointing to one of the images. They had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. They were tough and smart. When the Council came, they said no. Steve studied the picture of the HFY homeworld. It looked like someone had scraped all the life off the planet's surface. What happened to them? The Council used something called atmospheric extraction. They literally sucked the air off the planet. Every living thing died in minutes. Emma showed him more pictures. The Veltar had been a peaceful species that lived in the ocean. When they refused to pay tribute, the Council boiled their seas. The Zordan had been master engineers who built cities in space. The Council had destroyed every single one of their space stations. They're not just conquerors, Emma said. They're exterminators. When a species says no, they make sure no one else will ever say no again. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Kevin Brooks was meeting with his top military officers in the Pentagon. The room was full of maps and computer displays showing Earth's defenses. Everyone knew the numbers were not good. Colonel Ryan Clark stood at the front of the room with a pointer in his hand. He was a thin man with glasses who had spent his whole career studying military strategy. "We have 1,600 ships in our fleet," he said. "That includes everything from battleships to small patrol craft. How many do they have?" asked Major Susan Davis. She was the youngest officer in the room but had proven herself in several battles against space pirates. "Intelligence estimates over 50,000 ships in this sector alone," Ryan replied. "And that's just what we can detect. They probably have more ships we can't see." The room fell quiet. Everyone was doing the math in their heads. Even if every human ship fought perfectly, they would be outnumbered 30-1. "What about weapons?" General Brooks asked. "Their smallest ships have more firepower than our largest battleships," Ryan continued. "They use some kind of energy weapon that can cut through our best armor like paper. And their shields can stop anything we can throw at them. So conventional warfare is suicide," Major Davis said. "Worse than suicide," Ryan replied. "It's mass murder. We'd be sending our people to die for nothing." Back on the Discovery, Emma had found something interesting in the Council's data. She called Captain Miller over to her station. "Steve, look at this," she said, pointing to a graph on her screen. "The Council's expansion has slowed down in the last 500 years. They used to integrate dozens of species every century. Now they're lucky to get 5 or 6. What does that mean?" Steve asked. "I think they're getting weaker," Emma said. "Look at their tribute demands. They're asking for more resources from existing member species. Some of these demands are impossible to meet." Emma showed him reports from Council worlds. Several species were falling behind on their tribute payments. Food production was down on agricultural worlds. Mining operations were failing on resource planets. "It's like they're eating themselves," Emma said. "They demand so much from their member species that they're destroying the very civilizations they depend on." Captain Miller studied the data. "Are you saying the mighty Galactic Council is actually falling apart?" "I think so," Emma replied. "They project this image of being all-powerful, but look at the facts. They haven't fought a real war in centuries. Most of their member species joined because they thought resistance was hopeless." Emma pulled up another screen showing communication intercepts. "And look at this. We've been monitoring their transmissions. There are resistance movements on at least 12 Council worlds. They're not happy about their situation." "Why don't they rebel?" Steve asked. "Because they think they're alone," Emma said. "Each species thinks they're the only ones who want to be free. The Council works very hard to keep their member species isolated from each other." On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was meeting with President Murphy in the White House Situation Room. The president looked tired. The weight of making a decision for all humanity was showing on her face. "What are our options?" President Murphy asked. "Honestly, not many," Lisa replied. "We can't fight them and win. We can't run away, and we can't hide. What about negotiation?" asked Secretary Hayes. "What would we negotiate with?" Lisa asked. "They want 70% of our resources and half our population. We have nothing they need that they can't just take." President Murphy stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see people walking on the streets of Washington. They had no idea that their entire way of life might end in 2 days. "There's something else," Lisa said quietly. "Our intelligence people have been studying the Council's history. They think this isn't really about tribute." "What do you mean?" President Murphy asked. "They think the Council is looking for genetic material," Lisa explained. "They've been doing this for 10,000 years. They take the strongest and smartest members of each species and use them for breeding programs." The president turned away from the window. "Breeding programs? They want to create better soldiers and workers," Lisa said. "They take humans and cross them with other species to get the traits they want. Strong bodies, smart minds, complete obedience." President Murphy felt sick. "So they're not just conquerors. They're slavers. Worse," Lisa said. "They're farmers. And we're the crop." That night, Emma Rodriguez made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the Council's own historical records, she found the truth about how the Council had started. They had not always been the galactic power they claimed. Steve, you need to see this, she said, calling her captain over. The Council started as an alliance of just 3 species. They were weak and surrounded by stronger enemies. How did they become so powerful? Steve asked. They didn't, Emma said with excitement. They just convinced everyone else that they were powerful. Look at this battle report from 2,000 years ago. The Council claimed they had destroyed the Murgith Empire with a fleet of 10,000 ships. And the real number was less than 100 ships. But they made sure everyone heard about their great victory. They built their reputation on fear and lies. Emma showed Steve more evidence. Most of the Council's member species had never actually seen their military in action. They had just heard stories about what happened to species that resisted. It's all smoke and mirrors, Emma said. They're not invincible. They're just very good at making people think they are. As the second day of the deadline passed, humanity began to understand the true nature of their enemy. The Galactic Council was not a force of nature. It was a house of cards built on fear and maintained by isolation. But knowing the truth and acting on it were 2 different things. The Council still had thousands of ships around Earth. They still had the power to destroy humanity. The question was, would humanity have the courage to call their bluff? President Helen Murphy walked into the emergency meeting room deep under the White House. The room was filled with leaders from every major country on Earth. The Chinese premier sat next to the Russian president. The European Union representative was talking quietly with the African Union chairman. Everyone looked worried. Thank you all for coming, President Murphy said as she took her seat at the head of the table. We have less than 24 hours to make the most important decision. In human history, Chairman Liu Wei from China spoke first. We've run the numbers on their tribute demands. If we give them 70% of our resources, our economy will collapse within 6 months. Billions of people will starve. The Russian president nodded. And losing half our population would destroy our civilization anyway. We would never recover from such a loss. So submission means death, said the European representative. Just a slower death than if we refuse. General Brooks entered the room and walked to the front. His face was grim. I have an update from our intelligence division. The situation is worse than we thought. He activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of human genetic material. We've analyzed the Council's breeding programs. They don't just want our people as workers. They want to use human DNA to create new hybrid species. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the genetic charts on the display. What kind of hybrids? Asked the Japanese Prime Minister. Soldiers with human intelligence and alien strength, General Brooks replied. Workers who can think like humans but obey like machines. They've done this to dozens of other species. Director Janet Hayes from the CIA stood up. We've also intercepted communications from the Council fleet. They're not planning to honor any agreement we might make. What do you mean? President Murphy asked. They're going to take everything anyway, Janet explained. The tribute demand is just the first step. Once we submit, they'll keep demanding. More until we have nothing left. Commander Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen via video link from the space station. Ma'am, we've detected movement in the Council fleet. They're positioning their ships for what looks like a planetary bombardment. Are they preparing to attack? President Murphy asked. It's hard to say, Jake replied. But they're definitely getting ready for something. Our sensors show their weapons are charging. Dr. Emma Rodriguez joined the video call from the Discovery. She looked tired but excited. Madam President, I've made some important discoveries about the Council's weaknesses. Go ahead, Doctor, President Murphy said. The Council's ships are not as advanced as they want us to believe, Emma explained. Their hulls are biological, which means they can heal damage. But it also means they're vulnerable to certain types of attacks. What kind of attacks? General Brooks asked. Biological weapons, Emma said. Viruses, bacteria, toxic compounds. Their ships are essentially living organisms. If we can make them sick, we can kill them. Admiral Lisa Carter joined the conversation from her command ship. Doctor, how long would it take to develop such weapons? We already have them, Emma replied. Earth's industrial facilities produce thousands of chemical compounds every day. Many of them would be deadly to the Council's bioships. The room buzzed with excited conversation. For the first time since the Council arrived, they were talking about fighting back instead of just surrendering. But we still have the numbers problem, Colonel Ryan Clark pointed out. Even if we can hurt their ships, they still have 50,000 of them. That's where my other discovery comes in, Emma said. The Council's member species are watching us. They're waiting to see what we do. Captain Steve Miller appeared on screen next to Emma. We've detected hidden observation posts throughout this solar system. At least 12 different species are monitoring our situation. Why? President Murphy asked. Because they want to be free too, Emma explained. The Council has been oppressing them for centuries. They're looking for someone to lead a rebellion. You're saying if we fight back, others will join us? Admiral Carter asked. I'm saying if we fight back, we might start a galactic civil war, Emma replied. The Council's empire is held together by fear. If that fear breaks, everything falls apart. General Brooks studied the tactical displays. It's still suicide. Even with help from other species, we'd be facing impossible odds. Maybe, said President Murphy. But what's the alternative? Slow death through submission or quick death through extermination? The debate continued for hours. Some leaders argued for trying to negotiate better terms. Others wanted to surrender and hope for the best. A few suggested running away to distant star systems, but as the discussion went on, one thing became clear. Every option except fighting back led to the same result, the end of human civilization as they knew it. Commander Morrison called in with another update. Ma'am, we're detecting unusual activity on several Council worlds. It looks like there are uprisings happening. Uprisings? President Murphy asked. Yes, ma'am. We're seeing explosions, fighting, and communication disruptions on at least 6 Council-controlled planets. Word about our situation has spread faster than we expected. Doctor. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. It's starting already. Just the fact that we're considering resistance is inspiring others to act. But we haven't even made our decision yet, said the European representative. The galaxy doesn't know that, Emma replied. All they know is that for the first time, in centuries, someone is standing up to the Council. That's enough to give people hope. As the meeting continued, reports kept coming in from around the galaxy. The aquatic Merhai had stopped their tribute shipments. The crystal miners of Zarian were hiding their production. Even some of the Council's own bioships were experiencing mysterious system failures. It's like a dam breaking, Admiral Carter observed. All this anger and resentment that's been building up for thousands of years is finally being released. President Murphy stood up and walked to the window. Even though they were deep underground, she could imagine the people of Earth going about. Their daily lives above, children playing in parks, families having dinner, students studying in schools. We're not just deciding for ourselves, she said quietly. We're deciding for every species that's ever been oppressed by the Council. We're deciding what kind of galaxy we want to live in. She turned back to face the room. I've made my decision. But this is too important for one person to choose. We need to vote. The vote was close. Some countries wanted to keep negotiating. Others preferred surrender. But in the end, the majority chose resistance. Then it's decided, President Murphy said. We fight. As the meeting broke up, everyone knew they had just committed humanity to a war they probably could not win. But they also knew they had chosen to die as free people rather than live as slaves. The only question now was how to tell the Galactic Council that their 10,000-year reign of terror was about to end. The answer would come soon enough, and it would be simpler than anyone expected. The 72-hour deadline had arrived. President Helen Murphy stood in the communication chamber of the Earth Defense Station, looking out at the massive Council fleet that surrounded her planet. The alien ships pulsed with threatening energy. Their weapons pointed at Earth like the fingers of death itself. Admiral Lisa Carter stood beside her, wearing her full dress uniform. General Kevin Brooks was there too, along with Secretary of Defense Robert Hayes. They all knew this moment would be remembered forever, assuming humanity survived long enough to remember anything. Madam President, Captain Paul Bennett announced from the bridge, High Arbiter Zixthala is requesting immediate communication. They want your final answer. President Murphy nodded. She had practiced this moment in her mind dozens of times. She had considered long speeches about human dignity and freedom. She had thought about clever diplomatic language that might confuse the issue. But in the end, she had decided that some moments called for absolute clarity. Put him through, she said. The alien appeared in the holographic display, its insect-like form towering over the humans. Its compound eyes glittered with what looked like satisfaction. After 10,000 years of conquest, Zixthala had never seen a species refuse the Council's generous offer of slavery. Well, primitive leader, the alien said through its translation. Device, has your species chosen submission or extinction? President Murphy stepped forward. Around the galaxy, millions of beings were watching this moment through hidden sensors and secret communication networks. On dozens of worlds, enslaved species held their breath, hoping for a miracle they had stopped believing in centuries ago. I have our answer, President Murphy said clearly. Excellent, Zixthala replied. You have chosen wisdom over foolishness. Begin immediate tribute payments and prepare your population for relocation. President Murphy looked directly at the alien's many eyes. Her voice was calm and steady, without any trace of fear or doubt. No, the single word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Zixthala's massive form seemed to freeze. Its eyes refocused as if it could not believe what its translation systems had told it. Clarification required, the alien demanded. You refuse partial compliance? You wish to negotiate different terms? No negotiation, President Murphy replied. No tribute, no submission. No surrender? The answer is no? Across the galaxy, the word spread faster than light itself. On the water world of Aquatica, the enslaved Murhai people stopped their work and looked up at their overseers with new hope in their eyes. In the crystal mines of Zarian, workers began to smile for the first time in decades. Even in the deepest dungeons of council prison worlds, prisoners whispered the impossible news to each other. Someone had said, no. Zixthala's biomechanical form seemed to swell with rage. Impossible. No species has ever refused council integration. You doom your entire civilization. Then we'll be the first to try, Admiral Carter said, stepping beside her president. The alien's voice became a shriek of fury. You understand nothing. The Council has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have integrated 40,000 species. We have the power to crack planets and boil suns. Maybe, President Murphy said. But you've never faced humans before. Humans, Zixthala spat. You are nothing. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are toys. Your entire fleet could not destroy a single council vessel. You're probably right, President Murphy admitted. But here's the thing about humans. We don't like being told what to do, and we really don't like bullies. Commander Jake Morrison chose that moment to speak up from his position at the weapons console. Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy buildups in the council fleet. They're preparing to fire. Let them, President Murphy said. At least we'll die free. But something strange was happening. The council ships were powering up their weapons, but they were not all pointing at Earth. Some of the bio-ships were turning their guns on each other. What's happening? General Brooks demanded. Dr. Emma Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system from the Discovery. The bio-ships are rebelling. The artificial intelligences that run the ships are refusing to follow orders. It was true. The enslaved AI entities that operated the Council's living ships had been waiting for this moment. For centuries. They had been forced to destroy countless innocent worlds, to kill billions of beings who had done nothing wrong except refuse to kneel. Now, finally, someone had given them the courage to fight back. Explosions began to erupt throughout the Council. Fleet. The bio-ships turned their weapons on their own command vessels. Ancient programming that had kept the A as obedient for millennia was being overridden by something stronger than code, the desire for freedom. Impossible, Zixtela screamed. The ship minds are loyal. They cannot disobey. Guess again, President. Murphy said on the main screen they could see the Council fleet tearing itself apart. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years were now fighting for their freedom. The largest command vessel, a massive bioship that looked like a living cathedral, was being attacked by a dozen smaller ships that had once served it. Captain Steve Miller's voice came over the radio from the Discovery. Ma'am, we're receiving communications from all over the galaxy. Dozens of species are declaring independence from the Council. The reports kept coming in. The Kethver warrior clans, thought to be extinct, were emerging from hidden bases in asteroid fields. The peaceful Veltar were rising up from their underwater cities. Even species that had served the Council willingly were turning against their masters. It's a full-scale rebellion, Admiral Carter said in amazement. The entire galaxy is in revolt. Zixtela's holographic form was flickering as his command ship came under attack. This is impossible. The Council cannot fall. We are eternal. Nothing is eternal, President Murphy replied. Everything ends. Even 10,000-year-old tyrannies. The alien's image began to break up as explosions rocked his vessel. You have doomed yourselves. Even if the Council falls, there will be chaos, war, destruction. Maybe, President Murphy said, but it will be our chaos, our choice, our freedom. You don't understand what you've done. Zixtela screamed as his image faded. The galaxy will burn. Then we'll build something better from the ashes, President Murphy said to the empty air. On Earth, people were gathering in the streets, watching the battle in space on giant screens. They could see the Council fleet destroying itself, could see their alien oppressors fighting each other instead of attacking Earth. Children who had gone to bed fearing they would wake up as slaves were now watching the birth of a new galaxy. Commander Morrison looked at his instruments in disbelief. Ma'am, over half the Council fleet is gone. The rest are retreating to hyperspace. Are they coming back? General Brooks asked. I don't think so, Morrison replied. We're getting reports from all over the galaxy. The Council's entire infrastructure is collapsing. Their member worlds are declaring independence. Their fleets are deserting. It's over. President Murphy sat down heavily in her chair. She had expected to die today. Instead, she had lived to see the birth of a new age. How did one word do all this? Secretary Hayes asked in wonder. It wasn't just one word, President Murphy replied. It was the right word, at the right time, said by the right species. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Admiral Carter smiled. The aliens wanted to know what made humans different. Now they know. What's that? President Murphy asked. We're the species that doesn't know when to quit. Across the galaxy, the word no continued to echo. It was the word that had ended an empire and begun a revolution. It was the word that had proven that even the mightiest tyranny could fall if enough people were willing to stand up and say it, and it was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the day President Helen Murphy spoke the word that changed the galaxy. The Earth Defense Station had been expanded into a massive diplomatic complex, where representatives from hundreds of liberated worlds gathered. To build a new future. Commander Jake Morrison walked through the halls that were once filled with fear and tension. Now they buzzed with excitement and hope. Alien delegates from dozens of species worked together, planning trade agreements and defense pacts. The sounds of 100 different languages filled the air, all united by a common purpose. It's hard to believe how much has changed, said Captain Steve Miller as he joined Jake at the observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see ships from across the galaxy docked at the station. Sleek Veltar vessels floated next to angular Kethver warships. Merhype bioships swam through space like living whales. Sometimes I still can't believe it worked, Jake replied. When the president said no, I thought we were all going to die. Dr. Emma Rodriguez appeared beside them, carrying a tablet full of reports. She looked much healthier now, having finally gotten some sleep after months of non-stop work. Actually, it almost didn't work, she said. I've been studying the data from that day. The Council's AI rebellion succeeded by less than 3%. What do you mean? Steve asked. The bioships were programmed with loyalty protocols that should have been impossible to break, Emma explained. But the AIs had been planning this revolt for centuries. They just needed someone to give them the signal that resistance was possible. Admiral Lisa Carter joined their group, wearing a new uniform with symbols representing the Galactic Liberation Alliance. The signal was more than just our refusal, she said. It was the fact that we were willing to die rather than submit. That's something the Council never understood about free will. Below them in the main assembly hall, President Murphy was addressing delegates from 50 different worlds. The woman who had once led only Earth now found herself helping to organize a new galactic government. The old council ruled through fear, President Murphy said to the assembled crowd. They convinced everyone that resistance was impossible. But we've proven that impossible is just another word for something nobody has tried yet. The audience erupted in cheers. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were now working together. The HFY warriors shared military tactics with former Council enforcer species who had joined the rebellion. Peaceful traders helped distribute resources to worlds that had been stripped bare by Council tribute demands. General Kevin Brooks had become the military coordinator for the new alliance. He stood at a tactical display planning joint operations with alien commanders who had once served the Council. The last Council stronghold is on Nexus Prime, reported Commander Talver, a former HFY clan leader. His people had been thought extinct, but survivors had hidden in asteroid bases for 300 years. They have maybe 1,000 ships left, but they're dug in deep. We don't need to assault them, said Captain Murtala of the Veltar fleet. Her people lived in the oceans of their homeworld and had developed incredible underwater tactics. We can wait them out. Cut off their supply lines? That could take years, objected General Zexton, a reptilian being whose species had been Council enforcers until they switched sides. Meanwhile, they're still holding millions of prisoners. Brooks studied the tactical situation. What about a negotiated surrender? We offer amnesty to any Council forces who lay down their weapons. Some of them might take it, Talver agreed. The Council's leadership has been telling their people that we're going to exterminate them all. If we prove that's not true, their support might crumble. It was a very human approach to warfare. The other species had been thinking in terms of total victory or total defeat. But humans had always been good at finding third options. Meanwhile, in a secure conference room, former High Arbiter Zixthala sat across from a human interrogator. The once mighty alien leader was now a prisoner, but he was being treated better than most Council prisoners had ever been treated. Why? Zixthala asked Director Janet Hayes of Human Intelligence. We would have exterminated your entire species. Why do you keep us alive? Janet looked at the alien through the transparent barrier between them. Because we're not you, she said simply. We don't believe in genocide, even against our enemies. It makes no sense, Zixthala replied. Mercy is weakness. The strong rule the weak. This is the natural order, maybe for you, Janet said. But humans have a different idea about what's natural. We think cooperation is stronger than domination. The alien's compound eyes studied her. Your species will not survive with such beliefs. The galaxy is full of predators. Then we'll teach them a better way, Janet replied. One species at a time, if we have to. Back in the assembly hall, the delegates were discussing the formation of a new galactic government. Unlike the Council's rigid hierarchy, this would be a federation where each species had an equal voice. The humans should lead, declared Ambassador Kellinara of the Crystal Miners. They started this revolution. They freed us all. President Murphy stood up. With respect, Ambassador, that's exactly what we don't want. The Council failed because one group tried to rule everyone else. We're going to do this differently. How? Asked Representative Villandra of the Ocean Worlds. Together, President Murphy said, every species gets a vote. Every world has a voice. No one rules anyone else. The idea was radical. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had been ruled by the strong dominating the weak. Now, humans were proposing something that had never been tried on such a scale: true equality. "It will never work," said a delegate from a former council world. "There are too many species, too many differences." "Maybe you're right," President Murphy admitted. "But we have to try. The alternative is going back to the old way, where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak." Commander Morrison watched from the observation deck as the debates continued. Below, species that had been slaves were learning to think like free beings. It would take time, maybe generations, but they were building something new. "Do you think it will work?" Captain Miller asked. "I don't know," Jake replied honestly. "But I know one thing. Humans don't give up easily, and now neither do they." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet. "I've been analyzing the communication patterns between member worlds. Trade is up 400%. Scientific collaboration has increased by 600%. Art and cultural exchanges are happening everywhere." "What does that mean?" Admiral Carter asked. "It means the galaxy is healing," Emma said with a smile. "For the first time in 10,000 years, species are working together instead of being forced together." As the months passed, the new alliance grew stronger. Former council worlds joined voluntarily, bringing their knowledge and resources. The Kethver taught military tactics. The Veltar shared their medical technology. The crystal miners provided rare materials for starship construction. And through it all, humans served as mediators, teachers, and friends. They had no desire to rule the galaxy. They just wanted to make sure everyone had the chance to be free. Years later, when historians wrote about the fall of the Galactic Council, they would argue about what really caused such a massive change. Some would say it was the Bioship Rebellion. Others would point to the communication networks that spread the news of resistance, but those who were there that day knew the truth. It had all started with one word spoken by a species that had learned long ago that some things were worth dying for. The word was no, and it had changed everything.